Good morning, everybody, or at least it's morning here, depending on when you're watching this. Good afternoon, or just good day in general. Welcome to another video. Today we are kind of doing a reset video because if you watched my last one, I was a hot mess express. A lot just kind of went wrong. It was a stressful and long day, and I tried to use that as a lesson to set myself up for success or at least progress. So today we're going to do a little bit of art, a couple different things. We're going to do something that's relatively new to me. I did a screen printing class in college, and then I did a two-dimensional, like 2D design class. And in that one, we used a lot of different techniques and we kind of had the liberty. It was more of like, hey, here's the technique that you're going to try to go for, or hey, like we're learning contrast, so now you can use whatever art medium you want to do, but you want to portray contrast. And I created some of my most favorite pieces out of that class just because it was very creative. It wasn't just, oh, we're just drawing or we're just painting. It was, hey, we're learning about these concepts in art, and you can use whatever styles or practices that you want to use. But I could also go to my teacher and be like, hey, here's what I'm thinking, do you know something that might help me get through this or implement this the best way? And there were times that he would teach me a completely new technique or a new medium that I had never used, and it was great. So one of those was linoleum or lino prints, where you have pieces of linoleum that are relatively flimsy and bendy, just kind of like a rubber. But you cut your shape or your design into the piece and then you use it like a stamp. And I did that for at least 2 or 3 different assignments while in college and absolutely loved it. So today we're going to do it a little bit more. I printed a piece, not printed, I cut out a piece. I haven't printed it yet, so today we'll do that. But I cut out a piece for like this bird. So you can kind of see how I cut away from the design to kind of leave what would be black, right? So anywhere that I cut out, theoretically, if done correctly, should be white or at least a lighter color. But then you can just use it as a print and just kind of use it. Now, this is easy to cut linoleum or lino. You can have stiffer ones that I think probably would allow you to get more precise images. But for those, and we had that kind in college, you kind of have to heat it up so that you can cut into it because it's really stiff. Easy cut lino, I didn't have to worry about that at all. It was actually pretty easy to carve in. So come along with me as you guys get to watch me sketch out my design and then cut it out. I like doing smaller pieces like this because theoretically, like if I wanted to, I could glue something here on the back to use as a handle so that I can then use it quite literally like a stamp. Makes it a little bit easier. So I might do that at some point, but that's why I like to do smaller ones. Plus it's not as daunting. So we'll kind of go through that. Tools, I have a lino cutter. So it's a tool like this with different heads that you put in and tighten so that you can get different depths and different shapes and different widths. So that's helpful. And then when we actually print, you technically should be using ink. I don't have any ink, so we're just going to be using acrylic paint because I'm just going to put it on paper, so that's fine. It just kind of makes it a little bit more messy, but that's okay. Then you can use a hard rubber ink brayer. It's just a rolly, but it helps to kind of help give that smooth application that you're looking for. So come with me as we design, cut, and then actually hopefully print. Okay, so as you guys just watched, I worked on my lino cuts, and these have been kind of a couple days process working on my time management, as I discussed in the last video. And I had my sister and my nephew visiting this past weekend, so we had a busy time. But I really enjoy how these turned out and kind of the learnings, lessons I learned. There you go. That's a better way to put it. Um, there's a few things, few takeaways that I jotted down in my book because I'm trying to do better of when I actually try something and do something new, that I'm also noting down what I learned, what worked well, what I want to do for the future. Because I think what's great about a sketchbook is it can be used like a journal and it's for lessons. So, all that being said, as you guys noticed, the fact that I used acrylic paint instead of an actual ink, it dried a lot faster than I expected, and my first attempt got stuck with the paper, but that was okay with me actually. It kind of gave a fun texture to some of the things. It also made, particularly for the cat, it made where the black paint would be, it made the paper raised, which is kind of really cool. um, the sun kind of completely ripped, but that was okay. So, things that I learned, especially with my second attempt, was one, take your time. Lino cuts are a lot of fun, but if you rush, you can risk messing up the piece. I know for the cat one, the whisker parts, like here, that was an accident, but I kept working with it. And so there was that practice, of course, of kind of going with the flow. But I do highly recommend take your time, especially when you want something with precise cuts. So you're going to do better by going slowly, being precise with your depth and your length of your strokes. And then I also noticed that if you rush, especially with mine, like they get some pretty sharp edges with this, and so I kind of nicked some of my knuckles because it would jam and it would kind of get stuck. Now, people have created really cool like little desk things that you can use to kind of help give you that leverage. I just haven't invested in creating one or buying one yet. So, lesson one, take your time. Lesson two, practice the different cuts and line thickness. So the tool that I got it from Hobby Lobby. It comes with a couple of different nibs or like knife pieces, sharp pieces. I don't know what you want to call them. And they are great to be used for different things. And so I have not taken the time to kind of practice different lines, line depths, line widths, and just the variations of that. So that's something that I highly recommend you do if you try this, and something I want to do in the future. Lesson three, get proper ink or know your materials really well. So when I've done this previously with normal ink, it's never dried that fast and then ripped up the page. So I think it's good to kind of use the materials you're meant to use. Or if you're going to use something different, like with acrylic, I could have probably sat there and thought, oh, acrylic tends to dry very fast. If this dries in between, it could possibly mess up the paper. And so definitely know your materials. And then number four, shading is really hard with doing a lino cut because it's all about leaving negative space. And obviously where you want your really bright highlights, you're wanting to carve really deep into it because that's not where the paint's going to be. But I really want to practice a little bit more on my line variations. So having a larger amount, but smaller width of lines. So cross shading kind of, but by cutting things out of the linoleum. So all in all, those were my 4 lessons that I learned out of this. Take your time, practice different cuts with the lines, width, and depth. Get proper ink or know your materials. And 4, uh, practice your shading techniques, and that way you're able to kind of think backwards on where you want your highlights to be. All in all, I really enjoyed this. I hope you guys had some fun. If you have ever done lino, I'd love to know. I'd love to see your work too, so please feel free to message me on Instagram, Loved by Lydia Art. I'd love to see kind of what you do. Anyways, thank you guys so much for joining and watching.